welcome back to the GamecockScoop.com podcast, the official podcast of GamecockScoop.com on Rivals. If you're ever looking for extra Gamecock content in between our weekly podcast, that's the best place to find it, GamecockScoop.com. Tons of free and premium articles every single day over there. I'm Caleb, the publisher at GamecockScoop.com, joined by Alan, our main beat reporter in Colombia. Lots of stuff has happened since the last time we spoke. I believe if you go back to that, you will see us kind of riding high on the men and women's basketball success and singing a little bit of a different tune this week. Before we dive too deep into that, let's talk about a couple of football notes. Obviously, it's the offseason, so those come a little bit slower. From a recruiting standpoint, just a couple of quick notes to pass along, and then I'll have a much deeper look at all of this weekend in the weekly recruiting wrap-up. But Ryan Montgomery, who anyone that's been keeping up on our site would know is the South Carolina's top quarterback target, maybe top overall target at this point for the 2025 class. Obviously, there are some more highly rated guys or whatever, but it's pretty important to get that quarterback locked in. And as we saw in 2024, help you kind of co-recruit like Dante Reno did. Anyway, Ryan Montgomery, there was some initial thought that he might commit in the month of February. We're getting pretty close to the end of that at this point. I would say our new timeline is looking more like April-ish. He did a couple of visits, including to South Carolina, Florida, and Georgia back in, what was that, January, the little open period that there was. And I think maybe at that time he was hoping to kind of lock in his decision then, but it sounds like he's going to do another round of spring visits, including back at South Carolina during spring practice. So maybe have a little bit more on that as that all gets geared up. There'll be a lot of visitors in and out throughout spring practice. I'll keep you updated on those on the weekly recruiting wrap-ups. But another date to target from a recruiting standpoint is May 31st, that weekend. You'll remember, those of you that have been around for a while will remember that first weekend in June, first 2 weekends in June last year were pretty crucial, and it's looking like they're kind of setting that up again. A couple of official visitors have already started to announce for that weekend, and plenty more will. And we've talked about before, like South Carolina is really good at like creating these big events, kind of getting a little bit of buy-in and family atmosphere surrounding these guys at these events. And then there's a little bit of peer pressure, I think, to commit and to kind of come play together or whatever, which has worked out pretty well for them over the last couple of classes. So quick notes, it's kind of quiet right now otherwise, but some things to look forward to in the near future. And then the other big news is Sean Elliott, who, if you've been a Gamecock fan for a while, is a name you should be pretty familiar with. He coached offensive line underneath Spurrier, was the interim coach the year that Spurrier left. Really saw like a change in attitude from the team that year, but obviously you lose to Citadel, and that pretty much dooms your any thought that he was going to end up being the coach. So, of course, Muschamp became the coach after that. He was at Georgia State the last few years. Honestly, did a pretty good job, but sounds like
4 bowl games in 5 years, or 4 bowl wins in 5 years.
Yeah, but it sounds like he was on the last year of his contract, and the AD was on the last year of their contract, neither of which had been extended. So maybe to some degree he saw the writing on the wall, and we can also talk about his contract a little bit. He didn't take too much of a pay cut coming to South Carolina, where he is going to coach tight ends, but he also got a run game coordinator title, which is something that he helped a lot in revamping the run game under the Spurrier admin. He has like a zone scheme that works pretty well, and I mean, we saw some of the best running backs in school history.
Talking about Lattimore years, and
Mike Davis as well. Yeah.
I think the main thing with Elliott, you could tell how badly he wanted this. I know that's kind of cliche. Any coach you hire, any person on staff, they're grateful to be here. They're excited about the opportunity. Sean Elliott left his wife and kids in Colombia because he wanted them to live here when he took the Georgia State job. and has been commuting back and forth for 7 years to see his family. He told us at his introductory presser on, I guess that would have been Tuesday, that he bought a new truck 2.5 years ago and spent 110,000 miles on it, just going back and forth from Atlanta to Columbia. I think that says it all. This is exactly where he wants to be. He said he targeted this position when it opened, not the other way around. He's back with his family now. He mentioned his 2 kids that are in high school at AC Flora. I think it makes you better. I think it's better for him. I think it's better for South Carolina. Having a guy who knows the building, knows the staff, can recruit in Georgia, especially after all this time in state. I think it's a win on both sides.
No, I definitely agree. And really, when you look across the board now at this point, assuming there are no more changes, which of course we'll see, whatever, but assuming there are no more changes, you feel like you're probably better off as a staff, definitely from a recruiting standpoint, from an experience standpoint than you were a few months ago. Obviously, still some big losses. Limbo maybe at the top of that list, but I don't know. How are you feeling about the makeup of the staff, assuming that things have kind of settled down for a while?
Yeah, it's always one of those things where you're never going to know until they hit the recruiting trail, until they actually are coaching, in game and practices. We're still 3 weeks and change from spring ball starting. I think you upgraded on a whole. Like when you're taking the entire piece of it, I think you did about as well as you realistically could do in replacing Pete Lemba, which I agree with you is the biggest loss of the 4. Getting Joe DeCamillis and a Super Bowl winning special teams coordinator who had ties to the place. We just talked about, I think Elliott's going to be a big upgrade. And we were kind of in agreement that if there was a guy on staff that maybe wasn't pulling the weight, and I guess Shane Beamer agreed because this was the only one he actually got rid of on his own accord, Montario Hardesty at running backs coach, you feel like you made an upgrade there with Markel Blackwell too, and Beamer stuck his neck out for James Coley if you want to just complete the 4. So, I would say you probably upgraded overall, but you never know for sure on these things, so they have to go into a high school and win a recruiting battle.
Right, and win a recruiting battle at a place that's not Georgia or Alabama or whatever.
Texas A&M in Blackwell's case.
Yeah, which to Elliott's credit, he's done it here before, and he's done it at a smaller program before. So I think maybe more prepared than anyone for that challenge, at least from that standpoint. Also, you have to think, not that I think that Lonnie Teasley has done a bad job with the offensive line or anything at this point. I mean, it's really hard to tell, honestly.
Last year
with all the injuries, but not a bad thing to have someone that has a lot of experience there with Teasley, who it's his first time coaching that position after helping out Greg Atkins, when he retired and making that transition or whatever. So, it's not bad to have that guy down the hall if you need to ask a question or something.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so that's pretty much all we have on football right now. Obviously, we're going to start ramping up to spring. If you go to the site, actually, another thing that's going on right now is Coach Perry McCarty.
Film breakdowns, good ones.
Yeah, doing some film breakdowns. I know he was very excited about Michael Smith, 2024 tight end. He believes that even at a 5.8 4-star, which is what he was on Rivals, that he's a little underrated after breaking down that film. I tend to agree. I mean, he was at a small school level of competition. We'll have to see how all of that steps up, but no doubt he's a physical specimen that has a lot of upside. So anyway, you can go read that on GamecockScoop.com as well. Let's talk a little basketball. So, South Carolina, last time we were on here, was tied for first in the SEC. Had this big road matchup at Auburn ahead of them that did not go as planned. Their worst loss of the season. But we did talk about that's a very tough place to go win. I believe Auburn's average margin of victory at home going into that game was like 20-something points, which is absurd. And they doubled that against South Carolina. And then you're like, okay, not the end of the world. Got a winnable home game against LSU that you can bounce back with. And, I was watching. I covered that game that day. I was kind of pre-writing the story as the game was going on. I was like, oh, this is a win. I mean, it's not the prettiest win ever, but it felt like it was trending in the right direction. And then things fall apart in the final couple of minutes. Pretty devastating 65-64 loss. And then you have to sit with those losses because there's a little bye week right here during the week this week before they get back going again this weekend. At the end of the day, you're still sitting third in the SEC. You still have an opportunity head to head against Tennessee again to maybe move up. That's a home game. It'd be tough to catch Alabama at this point, but also like how realistic was winning the SEC or not, and even that's not completely out of the question. So like on paper, you're still okay. Emotionally, physically, your spirit, how are all those things doing, you think?
Yeah, I do want to backtrack to Saturday for a second because I was in the building for that too. I wrote a sidebar. You play. I don't want to say you played well enough to win because you did let a 16-point lead get down to 3 in the last minute, but you are up 3 with under 30 seconds to go. And then I don't even know how to explain it. I tried to in a bit of like a mini column. What happened there? Lamont Paris told us post-game he wanted them to foul. He was banging his arm as LSU was dribbling down the court, asking for a foul. He is pleading for it. You could hear Eddie Shannon yelling for it. Nobody fouls. Jordan Wright hits a layup, cuts it to 1, lets LSU call timeout to set up the press. South Carolina has a timeout when they're inbounding it. Jacoby Wright either doesn't realize or just doesn't call it, inbounds it right into the corner to BJ Mack. Mack also doesn't realize he has the timeout, admitted to us post-game he should have called it. LSU had the arrow. They tie him up, draw a foul, hit 2 free throws, win the game by 1. That is, I guess my question to you is that a sign that there's a problem for this team, or is that everything you could have possibly done wrong in the last 30 seconds of a close game you did, and you're just going to have to learn from that?
I think more the latter. And
that's kind of what I think too.
And I do think maybe not the worst lesson to learn now when you still have more season left. You don't want to learn that lesson in March right. and have to go home after that. So I mean, I think teaching moment, kind of surprising. Like you said, we kind of, I believe in Lamont Paris's introductory interview. I can't remember if you were the one, or his press conference. I can't remember if you were the one that asked it or someone asked it, but like his philosophy in that situation. And he's told us the whole time, we foul, we make them shoot free throws. And
it was his first game. They were up 3 in the last possession against, I think it was like South Carolina State last year. They fouled up 3.
Right. So I don't know what happened there. Like you said, it sounds like the coaches were communicating it. It wasn't getting to the players. Weird moment, and sometimes that is going to happen. I think I would like to think that all of those players, should they be in that situation again, are going to remember what happened there, and probably go about it a bit differently.
Yeah. And I guess my other question is, like, you set this up overall, you're still 21-5, 9-4 in the league. You do have 2 straight road games coming up, but it's 2 straight road games against middle of the pack teams in the league. It's Ole Miss Saturday, A&M Tuesday. Then you get 2 tough home games against teams playing very well right now, Florida and Tennessee. Then you end at Mississippi State. We did this with baseball last spring, kind of when they were sliding down the stretch. I think we did it like every episode. Where's your panic meter right now, 1 to 10 for men's basketball? Because I'd say like a 2, maybe. I'm still not.
Yeah, I was going to say like a 3. It is kind of a tough stretch, I think. I mean, like you said, they are winnable games, but none of them are gimmies either.
Right.
Like you just beat Ole Miss by 3 at home 2 weeks ago.
Now you got to go to their place.
Those guards are dangerous. Now, granted, I remember talking after that. They were knocking down ridiculous, 17-foot jumpers over and over throughout that night. Are they going to be able to do that on Saturday again? Assuming the South Carolina plays the same level of defense, it'd be hard to bet on that. So, maybe you're going to be okay there, whatever. But the final 3 of Florida, Tennessee, at Mississippi State, that's a tough way to end. I think even if you lost out at this point, you're probably safe. But
I think so.
But obviously, you want to carry a little bit of momentum going into March if you want to reach any of the goals that we were kind of dreaming about just a week ago. So
and one of those. Go ahead.
No, I think this weekend's going to go a long way in kind of determining where their mindset is following their only slide of the season thus far, these last 2 games.
Yeah, I was just going to say one of those goals we have talked about that is still definitely on the table is getting a double bye in the SEC tournament, going right to the quarterfinals. That's the top 4 in the league. You are in 4th now. You got 2 breaks last night. Florida and Kentucky both lost last night, so you're still in 4th, a full game ahead of both those. You had the tiebreaker over Kentucky. Obviously, that Florida game here is going to be crucial a week from Saturday. So I think that's still, even if the regular season title seems out of reach now, you're 2 games back with 5 to play. It's still realistic to try to get that top 4, get the double bye for Nashville. You go 3-2 in the last 5, and one of those 3 wins over Florida. I think you feel pretty good about your chances there.
Yeah, I agree. And for those of you that keep up with the rankings, South Carolina had obviously gone all the way up to number 11. They've skidded back to 20. I feel like maybe reality-wise, you're somewhere between those 2 based on the way that they've played all season. But I kind of understand, especially with that tough loss against an inferior opponent at home, why they skidded the way that they did. But I don't know. I don't think you do panic yet. I know that it didn't feel good last week, but every team in the country is going to go through these stretches. And the only question now is just, did you peak too early? We'll find that out soon.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much about the way to sum it up. And again, it's a tough game Saturday, but it's not an unwinnable game. I think Ole Miss is 6-7 in the league right now, so they've clearly been beaten. Obviously 7 times, I guess, in that case. But yeah, it's going to be very interested in the response Saturday afternoon on the road, off 2 losses. Had a week to sit on it with the bye. Just see how that looks coming out, especially early in the game Saturday.
Yeah, and I'll be covering that one on GamecockScoop.com if you want to come hang out in the live thread. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how they respond as well. On the women's side, you're still the most talented team in the country by all means. But by their standards, I would say they also had a little bit of a down week the last week. You got into a little bit of a rock fight with Tennessee, ended up pulling that off by 11, and then we're trailing Georgia at home on Sunday before you finally put them away. Ended up winning that one 70-56, but I don't think the score is indicative at all of how scary that game was. What's your sense here? Is it just like some late season malaise? You feel like you've gotten through the hardest parts of your schedule and maybe you're coasting a little bit? What's going on with
I think there's some of that. I think Dawn said this yesterday at her media availability. There is a real fatigue thing for this team. Obviously, there's freshman walls for players like Fulwile who just have never played a season this long. But even like Cardoso's never started every game of the season. Raven Johnson's never started every game of the season. Bree Hall's never done that. Like you're just at a point where your players haven't done this before. They haven't started 30 games in a regular season. Your freshmen haven't played 30 games in a season period. And I do think there is some fatigue starting to set in with this team. That being said, you're still 25-0 overall. You are 1 win away from clinching the SEC regular season championship. You can do that tonight at home against Alabama. I'll be there. Come hang out in the thread with me. And then I think you start to wonder, once you put that away, once you hang the banner or get the 1 seed in the conference tournament, are you starting to rest players? Are you starting to manage some minutes? You've got 3 games left after tonight till the conference tournament. How do you go about getting this team back to kind of peaking for March? Because I think they're pretty clearly not peaking right now.
Yeah, I also wonder if there's anything to be said about Cardoso's absence and then coming back. Now, granted, she's played great in both of those games, but just like the rotation, the flow of the game being changed up a little bit by having her there versus what we saw against UConn. It's obviously something I think that they figure out, and it's obviously something where you're better off having her on the floor than not. But I wonder if that's a factor at all too, just getting reused to what the rotations in the squad looks like when she's there.
Yeah, and then another point, I'll give credit to Brad Muller, the radio broadcaster, who pointed this out to me yesterday. Georgia played a ton of zone on Sunday, which they haven't really seen much of this year. Last year, every team they played was just trying to zone them, just zone. They can't shoot. Don't let them pack the paint. Don't let Aaliyah Boston do what she does. And now, because they can shoot so well, teams haven't really been doing that. They don't want to leave shooters open. But Georgia just said, yeah, we're going to zone you and you're not going to shoot as well today. And South Carolina, I don't want to say panicked, but they looked like they hadn't seen it much before. They did jack, I think, 18 threes in the first half and weren't shooting well, which is why they were down at halftime to the last place team in the league. And I just wonder if maybe they're going to start seeing more opponents zone them after what Georgia did for a half, and if that's going to be a problem going forward.
Yeah. And also to South Carolina's credit, I mean, you had was it your largest halftime deficit of the season?
Yeah, I believe so, because they actually cut it to like 4 or 5 of the half at LSU. So yeah, it was.
And you bounced back and immediately took control of that game coming right out of halftime. I believe Pau hit a 3 like within the first minute, and they were off and running from there. So they responded, took care of business. I don't think it's something long-term to be concerned about. But yeah, you got to be careful down the stretch here. Alabama is a team that could beat you.
Yeah, 20-win team. You don't win 20 games by accident.
And then you still have Tennessee lurking there at the end of the schedule, who, gave them a little bit of a scare last week too. So I don't think that you're to the point where you feel like an undefeated regular season is an inevitability based on the last 2 games. But you still obviously would put your money on it.
Yeah, I think definitely you want to win at least one more game, and you should, to get the conference championship, hang another banner. I still think that matters more than people think. When you win 2 national titles, conference titles kind of become out the window. But I still think a regular season title is a big deal, especially for this team that wasn't picked to win it. They were picked second preseason. So get that. But I also don't think a loss would be the worst thing for this team. We've said it for a while. I don't know where it's going to come from. Again, maybe Alabama tonight. They play pretty good defense. They can shoot. Maybe Tennessee clips you. Maybe one of those 2 road games. I think it's Kentucky and Arkansas next week. But yeah, I think right now it's all about March, figuring out what the deficiencies are now and making sure you don't have them at this time next month. And you've got 4 regular season games and a conference tournament to figure that out.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, they have a little bit of a Alabama football problem right now.
Yeah.
Where the expectations are just so high that don't forget to celebrate things that didn't happen for the last several decades before Don Staley got here.
That's a good point. I was talking about it with someone yesterday. If they win tonight, or when they win their next game, that's 8 and 11 years conference titles. They had won 0 and 40 before Don got here, and no program in the league other than Tennessee with Pat Summitt's won 8 conference titles. You'd be getting your number 8 tonight. Like, again, no one's going to care if you don't win the Final Four. I get it. I know how this works here now, but that's still a big deal.
Yeah, no doubt. So we'll have full coverage on that on GamecockScoop.com later this evening. Let's turn the page a little bit of baseball. It's officially kicked off. So opening weekend was last weekend. None of the games got rained out. We were a little worried about that for a second, but very nice weather on Friday, and then kind of dreary and a little bit cold Saturday, Sunday, but worked out just fine. And then they've won 2 midweek games since then as well. So off to a 5-0 start. Can't really ask for much more than that. Let's start with the Miami, Ohio stuff. I think that was probably the better opponent of the 3 that they've played so far. I guess, what did you learn from the series over the weekend? I definitely have a few takeaways. You did Friday, Saturday. I covered on Sunday. A lot of my takeaways have to do with Roman Kimball. And really, maybe let's start there in general. How are you feeling about the pitching? Better or worse than you did this time last week?
Yeah, I think probably better, mostly just because of the numbers you've been able to throw. I get it. It was Miami, Ohio. It was Winthrop. It was Queens yesterday. Especially yesterday, like you were able to, I think you saw Matthew Becker gets back from his injury, only throws 2 innings, same as Kimball, who we're going to talk about in a second. And then it becomes an 8-inning game with the run rule. So you have 6 innings to cover, 6 different pitchers throw an inning. You only gave up 3 runs, 5 hits. Yesterday you finished with 17 strikeouts, 2 walks. You're just kind of, it's too early to see if you have like an elite bullpen that can roll out 6 guys in an SEC game, but at least like for midweeks and maybe a Sunday when everyone's out of pitching anyway, like you've got depth right now. I think you saw some good stuff from Tyler Dean, the Virginia Tech transfer. I think he threw an inning in that no-hitter on Sunday. Tyler Pitzer, the freshman, pitched a scoreless inning Sunday in that no-hitter, another one yesterday. Trying to think.
Ty Cobb looked good.
Ty Good?
Ty Good, not Ty Cobb.
I mean,
I'm sure Ty Cobb would have looked good too. But...
Yeah. Yeah, Ty, that's a good point too. Ty Good pitched, I think, Sunday and Tuesday this week. He looked good. Again, you're just rolling out depth, and then your top guys, Eli Jones, 6 innings on opening day. Can't ask for anything more than that. 1 run allowed. Dylan Eskew, a little bit of a slow start, but he got through 5 innings. No runs allowed. I think he gave up 1 run, actually. And then Roman Kimball, I think we agree, is kind of the main takeaway from the weekend. Only 2 innings Sunday, but 5 strikeouts.
2 very dominant innings, and dominant without being perfect. He was struggling a little bit with his fastball. He was hyped. He was so stoked to be out there. After every single one of those strikeouts, he was like, to the moon or whatever. Yeah. And I think that hype to some degree had him overthrowing a little bit some of those fastballs, because he did have, was it 3 walks in those 2 innings. But I mean, completely dominant. He didn't give up a hit, struck out 5 of the 6 outs that he got. I came away very excited after seeing that showing. And then honestly, there wasn't that much of a drop off from Ty Good for the following 2 innings, who was almost equally as dominant. Like you said, Sunday they combined for a no-hitter, only the 8th in school history. Mm-hmm. That in of itself, when you go through, I believe it was 5 different pitchers on Sunday.
Yes,
is a pretty good proof of concept that your pitching staff at least has a lot of potential. For me, overall, like looking at the 5 games so far, I definitely feel a lot better about a pitching staff that I don't even know if I would have said cautiously optimistic about. I was kind of worried about, and I think so far exceeding expectations. Again, you have to take the level of competition into mind there and all, but did everything you could do, and 3 straight games of ruling your opponent. So the offense is doing all right as well.
Yeah, we had no questions about the offense. These guys are elite. We knew they would be. 55 runs in 5 games. Ethan Petrie's already got 3 homers. Messina hit his first one of the year yesterday. These guys are going to mash all year. I think we know that. My other pitching point was Matt Williams, pitching coach. It's so early, and we don't see all the behind-the-scenes stuff, but there's been a couple times this year where someone's been in a jam. He's come out for a mound visit, kind of calmed him down. Dylan Eskew was talking Saturday that Matt Williams calmed him down during a bases-loaded jam. I think it was in the 2nd inning of that game. And then yesterday, Matthew Becker puts 2 straight on base in the 1st inning of his first start back from injury. Williams comes out, 3-pitch strikeout after that, ends the inning. I think you like what you see. Again, the opponents we know. You're going to play 3 with Belmont this weekend. That's a little bit of a better opponent. They started the year 4-1, took 3 out of 4 from Eastern Michigan and beat North Alabama yesterday in a midweek. So you're upping your competition a little, but you still expect to handle them. Then another midweek, and then I think what we all agree pretty much every year is your early season litmus test. It's Clemson a week from Friday starting.
Yeah, and definitely looking forward to that one. That should be a lot of fun. One thing I wanted to note on at least the game that I watched in full on Sunday, no homers in that run rule game. They won 12-2 and 7. And to me, something that's been impressive with the bit I've watched of the other games as well is, yes, you do have the power, but I'm also seeing a lot of patience at the plate. They got walked 11 times on Sunday, and earned quite a few of those. I mean, there are some times where you could tell that Miami, Ohio was, digging deep for pitching.
A MAC school doesn't have enough pitching for a 3-game series.
Yeah, exactly. But also, I thought that they really battled at the plate sometimes, stirring some of those walks as well. And I've been impressed with the lineup, really top to bottom. I mean, you have guys like Talmadge LeCroy or Will Tippett who aren't, I mean, they could hit it out, obviously, but they're not the first names that come to mind whenever you think of power. But they've been pretty good about just like being scrappy and getting on base pretty consistently so far. So,
yeah, LeCroy especially, I think it's worth a shout out. Kingston said, I think it was Tuesday, he had a big game on Tuesday, that he's their most improved hitter from last season to this year. And again, tiny sample size, but you're seeing that already. He's slotting in that 5 spot right behind Petrie and Messina, and he's protecting them well.
Right. We'll have a full preview for Belmont tomorrow, and then have coverage all weekend for those games and the basketball games and everything else. Any other takeaways, I guess, from these first 5 games for baseball?
Not a lot. I think you you're doing exactly what you're supposed to do. That's all you can ask for right now. And like I said, a little bit of a tougher series this weekend, and then it's all eyes on maybe your biggest series of the season, at least for the fans.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like we're ramping up to a pretty interesting spring between the three sports that are still going right now, which is not something that you've been able to say here for a minute, at least across the board like that. So, great time to be a subscriber on GamecockScoop.com. Plenty of premium info, quotes, articles every single day. And we'll be back here for the GamecockScoop.com podcast around this time next week to talk more baseball and basketball. Until next time, we'll see you.